Ladies and gentlemen, Tucker Carlson has a new theory about President Trump.
Here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist? Well, who knows? At least that's my conclusion. Who knows?
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and that's quite the take, isn't it? A couple things to say about this before diving into it in more detail. One, Tucker's really going from 0 to 60 in terms of his Trump criticism, right? 0 being supporting him, think he's saving the country, to 60, he's the Antichrist. There's a lot of room between those two things, right? You could take a couple steps in a more critical direction and say he sometimes says imprudent things and does imprudent things, or I don't like his foreign policy, or even he's a bad president, or even that he's a criminal president, suppressing the rights of the American people and pursuing unjust wars. You could say all that and still not get to Antichrist. So why is Tucker all the way there? It's because Trump has crossed him on a big thing that he cares about, clearly almost more than anything, which is that Trump has allied and joined with Israel in a war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that's unforgivable. Now, Tucker complains about, understandably, some of the things that Trump has said recently. He's had this big flame war with the Pope. He posted and then deleted a meme of himself as Jesus Christ. These are bad. Shouldn't have done them. At least shouldn't criticize the Pope in the terms that he has at times. But are these really the worst things that Donald Trump has done? After the 2020 election, Trump engaged in a no-kidding effort to overturn a Democratic election. That was pretty bad, but Tucker, at least publicly, stood by him during that and has gone all the way to Trump is the worst figure potentially in the history of the planet if he's the Antichrist. I mean, this is serious stuff. This is a serious allegation. And again, it's because Trump is allied with Israel in fighting a war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So what evidence does Tucker muster here? Well, he goes to the Bible.
Chapter 11 from the book of Daniel predicts the coming of a king, and we're quoting now, a king who will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. It's all ordained, in other words, preordained. He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. So to a lot of Christians, or people who know the Bible well and believe in it, these predictions in both the Old and the New Testament, and there are others, seem to fit what we were watching.
I'm reminded of how the John Birch Society used to accuse Dwight Eisenhower of being a crypto-communist, and the rejoinder of the conservative writer Russell Kirk was, Ike's not a communist, he's a golfer. Same thing here. Donald Trump's not the Antichrist, he's a real estate developer and a golfer. Now, obviously, he's not a conventionally religious man. He's not well-versed in the Bible and in Christianity, but he said all sorts of things over the years to bolster Christianity in his own way. Here he was during Holy Week.
On Good Friday, the Son of God was nailed to the cross, crucified, and he died for all of us. It was a day of darkness, but it was at the end.
Now, certainly true over the last 10 days or so. Trump on Truth Social issued forth on Easter morning, which he shouldn't have done, with this threat to the Iranian regime that used the phrase, praise be to Allah, derisively. Shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have posted that, shouldn't have done it on Easter morning, but this was a way to try to gain leverage over the Iranian regime at a key juncture of the shooting war. Then we had Trump engage in this flame war with Pope Leo. Fine for a president to disagree with the Pope. He shouldn't do it in the terms he's very often used, and also posting this meme of himself as Jesus, which he claimed afterwards. He thought he was just a doctor. That's ridiculous, and he deleted it. Shouldn't have done any of that, right? All of that is bad, but does it really outweigh everything he's done to promote Christianity, to state his belief in Christianity, to welcome Christians into his administration, into his White House, to protect their conscience rights? No, I don't think so. Tucker quotes another biblical verse in the course of making his case against Trump in these lurid terms. Instead of going to the clip of Tucker on this one, let's actually take a look at these Bible verses on the screen. These are famous verses from 2 Thessalonians. Concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, I'm going to foreshorten here a little bit. Don't become easily unsettled or alarmed by teaching allegedly from us, asserting that the day of the Lord has already come. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Now that's Paul reassuring believers that Christ hasn't yet returned and painting this portrait, giving us this prophecy of what will happen before he returns. And we get this man of lawlessness, this man of terrible evil, this usurper of God who will inevitably be destroyed. So we really think that Paul was writing about Donald Trump, right? What has Trump done? Is he declared himself God? No, he posted a meme that he shouldn't have, and he deleted it. And he's criticized the Pope. By the way, it's okay to criticize the Pope. The Pope himself is not God. Tucker is a Protestant. Some of the greatest thinkers and theologians in the history of Protestantism have said much harsher things about the Pope than Donald Trump has during this controversy, right? They called the Pope the Antichrist. So this is just an absurd, over-the-top criticism of Donald Trump, and also represents kind of horseshoe stuff, because Tucker is coming at this from a right-wing point of view, or supposedly right-wing point of view. You have others who are saying exactly the same thing about Trump from the left. Here's a New Republic headline: Trump's quest for a Mar-a-Lago papacy. Here's a headline from The Nation: the real reason Trump hates Pope Leo, he wants to take his place. I don't think Donald Trump wants to be Pope. This is a role that would bore him. He's not interested in spiritual affairs. He's interested in action. Now, he might want to redesign or renovate St. Peter's Square, but otherwise, this is a role that would not interest him. What is he interested in? He likes wielding power. He likes wielding executive power. He likes wielding military power as he deems appropriate. And you think this is good or bad or somewhere in between. It's probably somewhere in between, but it doesn't make him the Antichrist. He's not the first U.S. president interested in wielding power, not the first secular leader around the world interested in wielding power. But Tucker is making this deeper spiritual case against, really vicious attack against Donald Trump, because it connects to a broader theme of his, which is that the United States government is allegedly anti-Christian.
And once again, it's the country with the most Christians. But it's not a Christian country. And in fact, if you take 3 steps back, it's a nation, or it's a government anyway, that has for a long time really acted in opposition, explicit opposition to the interests of Christians, not just in the United States, but around the world. Our foreign policy, for example, seems to target Christians. And this has happened consistently enough that it's probably not an accidental byproduct of the policy. It may be the point of the policy.
Now, what evidence does Tucker muster for this proposition? He cites Vietnam, Iraq, and what's been going on in the southern part of Lebanon here the last couple of weeks. Let's tick through those. Vietnam. It's true, as Tucker says after this clip, that we abandoned Catholics in Vietnam, which became a communist country. Well, the first part of the Vietnam War, we clearly tilted towards Catholics. We became more neutral when there were Buddhist protests and the leader we had supported, Diem, falls. But we didn't want to lose the Vietnam War. We didn't want to abandon anyone in Vietnam. But what happened? Well, you had isolationists like Tucker Carlson cutting our legs off in Vietnam and saying even at the end we couldn't even bomb in support of the South Vietnamese army, which might have been a sustainable policy and might have saved South Vietnam and saved a lot of Catholics from a lot of suffering. Then there's Iraq, which was a terrible tragedy. You had Christians cleared out of Baghdad at the outset of the war. Then you had Christians and other minorities suffering a terrible fate when ISIS takes over Nineveh later in the war. Now, this was not just targeted at Christians, Yazidis, lots of other folks, terrible suffering there. This is not anything that the United States deliberately caused or wanted to happen. It was an unfortunate byproduct of the war. Southern Lebanon, yes, we have Christian communities displaced there in this fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. That's certainly not Israel's deliberate policy either. If they wanted to bomb Christian communities, they could do it at any time. What they've done is responded to Hezbollah attacks in the course of the war against Iran. So if Tucker is concerned about these Christian communities in southern Lebanon, he could urge Hezbollah not to rocket Israel anymore. This terrorist group to lay down their arms. That would serve his purpose nicely, you would think, but no, he doesn't do that. It's all about blaming Israel. Now, you can make a very good case the United States government should have been more cognizant of the interest of Christian communities, vulnerable Christian communities around the world over the decades. But you know what? President actually has been paying more attention to this issue in a very productive way. Donald Trump, this is why in his first term we get an executive order, we get a national security strategy that put a real emphasis on the protecting the rights of vulnerable religious minorities around the world. That's Christians. In Nigeria, Trump has made a big deal of the abuse of Christian communities there. He actually bombed Nigeria in response to it. He designated Nigeria in response to this. Actions and kind of rhetoric we never would have had from Joe Biden or from Barack Obama. But why let evidence get in the way of your smear of Donald Trump? The deeper case Tucker is making here is that there's a new religion that Donald Trump is allegedly promoting.
That's why they broke. That's the thing that split their relationship and got the president attacking her and Thomas Massey and the Pope. So what does that tell you? It tells you what the religion is. The religion is Israelism. It's the support of Israel. That's why the president is totally comfortable surrounding himself with evangelical preachers, every one of whom has one thing in common, whether they're word of faith preachers or charismatic preachers or not.
So there you have it. It's not a Christian country, but it's an Israelist country. Where does this even come from? Look, Donald Trump is a strong ally of Bibi Netanyahu, has been for a long time. We've known about this for a very long time. If it fundamentally offended you, never should have supported Donald Trump, and he launched this war in Iran. That represents a foreign policy disagreement, not a religious disagreement. There are no Israelist churches or Israelist synagogues or Israelist catechism. Donald Trump chose to do this under his own power. He's not controlled by Israel. He's clearly the senior partner in this relationship. As I'm recording this right now, a couple hours ago, Donald Trump Truth Socialed about how he's prohibiting, all caps, prohibiting Israel from attacking Lebanon again, which is not the way someone talks if they're the junior partner in an alliance. So this is Tucker going to a really profound conspiracy theory that the United States government is controlled by evil forces, and the leader of those evil forces is the current president of the United States. That is a disgraceful smear. And hopefully when Tucker Carlson actually at some point returns to planet Earth, he'll have the honor and the good grace to actually apologize to Donald Trump for making this preposterous charge. Trump certainly deserves one. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.